I'm a first-year journalism major from Brooklyn, New York.
Erica Bowler, strategic communications major from Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Maya Bullock, I'm a first-year strategic communications major from Harlem, New York.
My name is Dominique Ridley. I'm a first-year criminal justice major from Jersey City, New Jersey.
My name is Ronald Thompson Jr. I'm a first-year political science major from Washington, D.C.
Bioterrorism is a terrorism involving the intentional release of biological agents. These agents are bacteria, viruses, and toxins. They may be in naturally occurring form or human modified form. These methods can be used in warfare. Biological warfare goes back as early as 600 BC. Polluting wells and other water sources of the opposing army was a common strategy that continued in many European wars and the American Civil War. In the Greek and Roman times, the first recorded use of biological weapons occurred. Archers infected their arrows by dipping them into decomposing bodies. During World War I, Germans used undercover agents to infect the livestock of Allied countries. During the Cold War, the United States armies tested the vulnerability of the United States to a biological warfare attack. In September 1950, Sarita marksmen and Bakilas Golgi were released from ships in the San Francisco Bay Area. The history of biological warfare is scary and real. The United States remained vulnerable to these attacks by enemies. We must take caution for our public health.
Today, I'll be talking about pre-modern and 20th century biological warfare. First of all, what is biological warfare? It's simply the use of biological pathogens to kill or incapacitate one's enemy. So starting with pre-modern. Pre-modern armies tried to use naturally occurring diseases to their advantage. In 1346, the Tartar army, they tried to use the plague to their advantage. They threw the bodies of the plague victims over the wall of Kaffa in an attempt to initiate an epidemic. That ended in them dying as well. During the French and Indian Wars of the late 18th century, English General Sir Geoffrey Amherst distributed smallpox-infected blankets to Native American forces. Now to the 20th century. It is said that states have been the biggest developers of biological warfare programs, not terrorists. In 1984, the Rajneesh cult in the U.S., they made hundreds of ill people sick by poisoning them with salmonella in the Oregon salad bar. In March of 1995, Japanese religious cult Aum Shinrikyo, they released a sarin gas on the Tokyo subway. 2 years before that, they sprayed anthrax from a rooftop. Over the years, the use of this warfare has gone from the poison arrows mentioned by Roderick, used by the Viet Cong guerrillas, and also poison wells from the Spartans, bombs with deadly bacteria by the US, Japan, the Soviets, and Iraq. The use of biowarfare has been around for centuries and will remain a tactic used for many more.
Okay, I'm going to be discussing how do we protect ourselves from bioterrorism in a medical aspect. So ever since the tragic events of September 11, 2001 and the anthrax accident, many Americans have feared for their lives due to not only terrorism but bioterrorism as well. The U.S. has been trying to make sure there are protective orders in place to protect the country from these deadly attacks, but they have not been very successful. Bioterrorism is a silent but deadly and sneaky attacker. So if the government can't help us, what do we do to protect ourselves? Though some doctors object this approach, some scientists and other doctors suggest taking antibiotics such as Cipro and doxycycline. This is suggested because instead of waiting for the government to administer the antibiotics to everyone, citizens will be able to respond firsthand on their own.
Biological agents spread through the air, water, or food. Some can also spread from person to person. They can be very hard to detect. They don't cause illness for several hours or days. Scientists worry that anthrax, botulism, Ebola, and other hemorrhagic fever viruses, plague, or smallpox can be used as biological agents. Biodefense uses medical measures to protect people against bioterrorism. This includes medicines and vaccinations. It also includes medical research and preparations to defend against bioterrorist attacks. Several multi-agency simulations have exposed weaknesses in systems designed to respond to biological emergencies. These exercises have helped the folks planning efforts on the need for emerging plans to address the potential for a large bioweapons event to overwhelm medical capabilities, cause widespread illness and death, and lead to economic and social disruption. The successful deployment of vaccines, antibodies, and other medications in a bioweapon that will depend on a number of factors, such as how many people the attack has the potential to harm, the accessibility of the transportation system in emergency, the ability of viable vaccine and drugs, and the ability of the public health system to communicate with the public and get the vaccines and medicines into the people who need them. Agencies involved in bioweapon response. The Prevention Office of the Public Health and Preparedness and Response, the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, NBACC's National Biological Threat Characterization Center, and that's it. The Bioterrorism Act of 2002. This law authorized the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to take action to protect the nation's food supply against the threat of potential contamination. The Food and Drug Administration, as the food regulatory arms of HHS, is responsible for developing and implementing these food safety measures, including four major regulations: the registration of food facilities, the prior notice of imported food, the establishment of maintenance and records, and the administration detectives. That's it.
As we've discussed, biological warfare is not a thing of the imagination. In 1995, New York Times reporter Nicholas D. Kristof reported on Unit 731, a division of the Imperial Japanese Army that at the height of World War II researched and planned to deploy biological weapons. Unit 731 went so far as to experiment on human subjects in Manchuria and hypothesize and propose plans to deploy biological weapons on American troops as they approached the Japanese home islands at the end of the war. In 1996, spy novelist Tom Clancy wrote his very popular Jack Ryan novel series of an Ebola outbreak at the hands of an Iranian-backed terrorist group. And in 1998, the New York Times reported of a Soviet defector who stated that the Soviet Union was prepared to utilize biological weapons in case of the outbreak of World War III. As we've seen in the aftermath of the September 11th attacks and the sarin gas subway attacks in Japan, biological attacks are real. We know that there are stockpiles of biological weapons in the Middle East and nations like Syria and Iraq and Iran and in Russia and in North Korea. The question is, what will we do to secure these stockpiles? What will we do to prevent future attacks? How are we preparing? And is the United States suited to deal with these attacks? If we can answer these questions, we can avoid major catastrophes in this century, in the coming years, in the coming decades. The question is, when will we act to prevent the next biological strike?